March 2020, Paris empties as the first lockdown is announced.
Nous sommes en guerre, et cela requiert notre mobilisation générale.
City dwellers flee and seek refuge in the countryside. 3 years later, what has become of those Parisians who embarked on another life? And how has the arrival of these neo-rurals affected the local landscape? We went looking for answers in France's Perche regional park. Here in Sablons-sur-Huisne, a town in northwestern France, Grégoire and Geraldine are both working from home. He works as a freelancer in the digital sector, and she's a scriptwriter. They've been joined by Pascaline, a company manager, who they met online. In 2019, they lived in Paris and were looking for a country house.
Our plan was to stay in Paris, but as we were both freelance, we were able to go to the countryside often. If we got fed up with Paris, we would take the train to the countryside, and if we got fed up with only seeing animals, we'd go back to Paris for a social life.
But COVID put a stop to those plans.
The first lockdown came 6 months later, during which we were here the whole time. It was in spring, so it was the best time to discover the countryside. We actually even said to ourselves, it's a pity the lockdown won't last longer, because we're actually very content. It was when the new school year started and they were talking about a second lockdown that we said to ourselves, it's been 6 months and we've been to the flat that we're paying 1,400 euros a month for, maybe twice, so we might as well let it go for now and see what happens.
3 years later, they've settled in this house for good.
And this is a guest room. This couch is handy for naps.
They invite friends to stay, where they discover a new way of life in the countryside.
We live more simply and with less things. We're less caught up with consumerism. We consume what's around us. I think that's been really significant. There's less unnecessary stuff, and so you're closer to what's really important. I think it's a good way to live, even though our parents are a bit surprised by our lifestyle. But it's cool.
Pascaline's a local entrepreneur, and she's surprised by the region's sudden popularity.
I hadn't really anticipated that COVID was going to suddenly make the region a hotspot for all those who already had houses, like Grégoire, who came during lockdowns, and for others who came to spend post-lockdown weekends at their friends' houses and said to themselves, it's actually great here. And so suddenly they were all buying houses.
For the last 3 years, the neo-rural phenomenon has been on the rise in the countryside close to Paris. This real estate agent specialises in properties in the Perche region. He shows us a farmhouse coupled with a gîte. His clients, who are exclusively from Paris, are often looking for this sort of property.
Before COVID, Parisians wanted a small country house as a second home and a nice living space in Paris. Today, the majority of them have completely reversed this trend, so they keep a very small place in Paris and they buy large properties in the countryside, which they can live in as a main residence and all year round. Prices have risen by between 20 and 40%. This house is up for sale at 638,000 euros. Before COVID, it would have more likely been priced at around 400,000 euros.
Another notable trend, transactions on social networks.
Here we are. Last week, I put up a listing for a house on Thursday, posted it on Instagram on Thursday night, and by Friday morning, I had 2 viewings and the house was sold. Someone who saw the pictures on Instagram who didn't really know the area called and made an offer.
And you thought they couldn't be serious?
Well, yes, it was hard to take them seriously.
Le Perche Nature Park is less than 2 hours from Paris by car and 1 hour 30 minutes by train, making its countryside accessible and its rich local heritage even more attractive.
Here is the castle with a dungeon from the year 1000.
For the mayor of Nogent-le-Rotrou, the arrival of so many Parisians is very good news.
For a town of 10,000 inhabitants like Nogent-le-Rotrou, this means 200 more residents, about 30 more children in the schools, 100 to 150 commuters every day, meaning workers who take the train every day at Nogent station, and it makes a difference for local businesses. 25% of their turnover comes from tourists and Parisians.
But this new influx of people has certain consequences. Every day, regional trains are overrun at Nogent-le-Rotrou station, and parking spaces are now in short supply.
If we put in a whole road there, we gain about 30 places.
Is that all we can do? Can't we get more in? Since COVID and lockdown, we really need to reinvent the station area because the residents are complaining. The restaurant is running out of space, customers can't park. There's a lot of rudeness, so it's under discussion. We're aiming to get it done within the year.
About 20 kilometers from Nogent-le-Rotrou, the small town of Belém. Here, Parisians have long been part of the social fabric. Markets, second-hand shops and trendy boutiques line its cobbled streets. There are a record 80 shops for every 1,500 inhabitants. But for Valerie, whose family has run this hotel for 3 generations, the town has changed too much.
I was born here, my grandmother lived here, so I never thought of going to live anywhere else. Except that today, I couldn't buy a house in Belém. For half the week, the city is dead because it's only local people here. There are decoration shops, antique shops, but it's not what you need on a daily basis. There are several clothes shops here, but there's no baby shop. We don't have a jeweler anymore, or a florist. So we take the car and go to Mamers or Nogent to do our shopping.
In addition to driving up prices in the region, city dwellers also sometimes have snobbish attitudes.
So there are 2 categories. There are those who are nice, who came here to be in the countryside, and there are those who won't come to us because we're not good enough for them, as we're a small working-class restaurant. There was a woman once who, she made me laugh. She came, she was just surprised that we had electricity, because to her, well, we were country bumpkins.
Different lifestyles and sometimes conflicting views. Farmer and stock breeder Benoit Koning experiences this on a daily basis. His family has been raising cows in Le Perche for almost 100 years, but he regularly comes up against the arguments of newcomers to the region, particularly on environmental issues.
They only look at things that interest them, and I find that they look at things in a very binary way. It's always black and white. Not all of them, of course, but a lot of them. This week I was in a meeting with a farmer friend. He got a phone call because he was having his hedges pruned by a contractor. A neighbour called him to say that it was a scandal to cut branches from trees, even though they're on the edge of the fields. He wanted to cut them so he could farm, so they don't overflow like on the roads. So he was forced to stop.
And it's not only trimming hedgerows that's a problem. In Le Perche, traditional agriculture and the chemical processes used meet strong opposition from fans of organic produce.
I'm in conservation agriculture, and if we don't destroy weeds mechanically, we destroy them with glyphosate. They accuse us of polluting, but they never take into account that we're the only profession in the world where we actually capture carbon. And having to justify yourself all the time is also one of the reasons why farmers are at the end of their tether. It's not always about money.
The farmer admits, however, that there is an upside. Environmental awareness does boost sales of local produce. In Nogent, those products have pride of place in trendy restaurants and food shops favoured by many former Parisians. And for the mayor and his team, this new diaspora represents a commercial and social opportunity. The city's getting ready to open a major cultural centre.
We'll transform the Saint-Denis Abbey, which is to be vacated by a school, into a cultural centre. We want to create a cultural destination people visit, to be a gateway for tourists, to be a cultural hotspot.
In the meantime, the people of Nogent can visit the 108, opened last year by a couple of former Parisians. The Atalis have restored this manor house at great expense and have created an art gallery and a tea room on the property.
We had a long-standing dream of having a place where we could show the artwork we wanted to show. We could never have set up a gallery like this in Paris, never. We would never have had the means, it's as simple as that.
All these paintings are by the same artist, Katz. He likes colour. And this is a piece of earthenware by an artist called Dominique Sayas.
The idea is to invest in Nogent's cultural scene and bring artists from all over the world to this corner of the French countryside.
It's also a gamble, trying to change the cultural deserts you can see outside Paris and big cities in France and ensure things are happening by moving cultural life from Paris to the countryside. I'm absolutely convinced there's a great shift taking place.
A shift from the major cities to the French countryside, which 3 years after the COVID outbreak seems to be taking hold.